computer. Okay,
Yes.
recording. Yeah, so
Thanks.
just for the base of the recording, I just want to start with a story that happened back in 2012 and 13 when I was on a one-year contract with NUS. So when you're on a one-year contract, you are basically looking for a job in every one of those 365 days. And looking back, I'm so glad that I did go there. It was a great experience. So I ended up getting renewed for another year. But it's interesting. I had a boss then that said, oh, I can link you with another university in Singapore, put your application in and put in a good word for you. So I ended up going to this other university, applying for a job. They asked me to come and to give a teaching presentation. So I gave an example of teaching, and so that's great. And then the next stage was, oh, can you talk to some of the senior people in the department in this university? So had a quick interview with them, and that all went pretty well. And, okay. Oh, next stage. Oh, we want you to talk to the president and his deputy, PVC. So, okay. And that was a week later. So I'm preparing for that. And I ended up failing the last interviews because they told me that, oh, you didn't really have a clear sense of your leadership ability and the different things that you were doing. And so what I want to do is I just want to share the screen of what my CV looked like then, because often there are two channels of communication that you are giving when you're applying for a job or promotion. One channel is your presence in the interview, but another channel is what is written down on paper. So let me just have a look at, let me just see if my CV can come up. All right. Can you all see that?
Yes.
All right. So this is what my CV looked like in 2013, and at the time you can see, okay, there's just me, there's positions and teaching experience, and research, papers under review, great, papers in projects in process, and then there's publications, and there's a few publications there, most recently the AOS 2011. All right. And so you just scroll through down and it's got editorial board membership. This is something that I think it's important for everyone to at least be on to be on an A grade editorial board. Okay. At least one. You don't need to be on 2 or 3. Otherwise, you want to be on one that you feel that you can commit to and do 3, 4 reviews a year and get to know the editorial board. So do reach out and try to get onto one of these editorial boards. Some external grants, industry engagement, and conference papers. This is great. And consulting, teaching, and then service. And I listed out, look, leadership in very small capitals, right? Not much there. And so this is what I went into this position with, just a CV, 12 pages long, and that was it. And I really failed to communicate the potential I had as a leader, because at the time I'm associate professor and I'm applying for a associate professor / professor position. They expect you to be leading, not just doing research. And I think at that time I had an executive summary that I put together. This was 2011. I had an executive summary. Even when I was leaving Hong Kong U because I didn't renew my contract, I summarized from July 2006 to June 2011 everything that I had done, and I put it into a graphic like this: research papers, published case studies, books, external research grants, and then Keynote, Teaching Excellence Award, teaching courses, PhD students, and you can see. And so and then I even did a summary of my activity from City U, my first 10 years, and then Hong Kong U, my next 6 years. Of course, Hong Kong U didn't, City U gave me tenure. I left, I gave it tenure, went to Hong Kong U, and then then they didn't give me tenure there. And I was so very, very, very disappointed that they didn't give me tenure. All right. But anyway, one door closes, another door opens, and then I get to go to NUS, which, wow, you know, if any of you come to me and say you got an opportunity to do 1 year contract at NUS, I would say go. You just got to do it, because you just see a totally different world there. It's just amazing, even different from Malaysia. All right. And so basically, that's even before you see me in Monash. Now, my application for Monash was, and you fast forwarding 4 years, that's my application for Monash. Here is what my CV looked like when I applied at Monash. Notice how I changed my CV. Now I've got a big title called research. Now, the other thing about CV, keep it simple. All right. Black and white is okay. Black and white is okay. Don't color it up. Don't use fancy formatting. You can use bold, fine. But notice I have the big research note here. Notice I have in bold 16-point published case studies, research grants and awards, PhD supervision. So now my CV is more communicative, because I am making very clear that it's full of different chapters. This is the chapter on teaching. All right, great. Here's the chapter on online teaching. Here's the chapter on industry engagement. And here, knowledge transfer. That was very big back in 2013, 14, and 15. What's the knowledge you're transferring? Maybe we're talking about impact these days. Same idea. And then student career development, management, and leadership. So notice my leadership starts to grow now, but then it wasn't upfront and personal. But let's fast forward. All right. So that's early days when I applied for Monash. Now I want to show you my most recent CV. And the reason is I want to show you how it's evolved over time, because your CV needs to evolve over time as you're adding things to it, but evolve in how you want to communicate, because this is the first thing that people see when they see your CV. So now this is my modern day CV, and it's short. It's 22 pages long compared to the 12-page one a decade ago. But now I've got the first page, which is basically a summary of academic positions. And this is in a table form. So it's in list form. Why is that important? Because, well, it's there if people want the detail. They want to see your history. What have you done in the last 20 years? Okay. And so then they can ask questions about that if they want to, but it's just there. They don't have to file through the CV to the 20th page to find out what you did a decade ago. So then a bit of impact, and maybe basically your first page is summarizing everything in numbers. Leadership, management experience, impact, and then at the bottom, refereed papers, 5 Financial Times, 3 A star, 7 A, 8 Q1, 5 B, and then you got books, external competitive grants, and then industry, executive ECR training workshops, 67, invited lectures, 54, media interviews. And this is not even counting conferences. So I actually don't even count them anymore. And they're in an appendix, and I think I've actually cut it out of this appendix of this CV. Yes, this CV has an appendix. So, all right. So what have I done now? What I've moved front and center now, because now I'm at professor level, I need to highlight my leadership first. And so if you were to create one PowerPoint slide that summarized what you have done in management and leadership, I think that would be an important thing to put together. What would you put down in 5 points that distinguishes you as a leader in your position? And let me say that even if you are a lecturer, you are a leader. You're a senior lecturer, you are still a leader. All of you have led something. You cannot say that, oh, I'm not a professor yet, so I don't have anything to show on leadership. Yes, you do. You have led in course development. You have led in being involved in working with the profession. You are leading the profession in terms of how to transfer what they want graduates to have into meaningful teaching operations that you do in those 12 weeks that you teach. So you are a leader. So do not discount where you are at the moment in terms of and I've put this under making a difference. So think about, what are you doing to make a difference in that summarizes your leadership? Okay. So let's just move on, because there's my head of department stuff. But the other thing that I think is really useful in your CV is to tabularize what you're doing. Don't just, okay, I've listed out things, but I've listed out in point form. Okay, great. But once you start dating stuff, it's better to tabularize. So you have that's a table. So a table with position, what the position involved, and what was the date of that position. So you got internal leadership and service, then you got external leadership and service. And if you just squeeze it onto one page, then that is all you need to do. But this is a table that it'll keep growing as you grow in your position. So keep that simple and in point form, so people can have a date idea of what have you done at different points in time, and try and keep it as small as possible. I'm using Times New Roman 11 point here. All right, so now let's go to research. And some of you have got pipeline already, and you think then, well, don't do interview panels, promotion panels, do they need to know your pipeline? Yes, they do, because if you're going for a position outside, they want to know, what are you going to bring, and what is the future going to look like over the next 2 years when they appoint you? And for promotion, what is your new promotable position as senior lecturer, as associate professor, going to look like once they promote you? Because nothing more than what a panel would love to see is to know that they have made a good decision in promoting you, to know that they have made a good decision in hiring you. And then they'd say, 1 year after they've hired you, 2 years after they've hired you or promoted you, see, I made a good decision here. So the whole idea of documenting your pipeline in a little bit more detail is very critical. Have you submitted it to a journal? What is the research type? And is there industry collaboration associated with that? Why do you put industry collaboration? Because that gives you a chance to evidence stuff you're doing in terms of engagement. So your research it flows out into an engagement story. You are engaging industry in doing your research. Wow. All right. So this is the pipeline, and then it gets to your research. And I can tell you now, number one, they're looking at dates. Let me just show. All right. They're looking at dates, but they're also like 2022, then there's 2020, there's 2018. So they're looking at dates, but also they're counting. So now I've got numbers that count. And now that I have, and what else they're looking for? They're looking depending on where you're applying, they're looking to see if you got Q1 or A star. So therefore, it doesn't hurt to put that in brackets, because I know now when we are looking at shortlisted candidates, I have to spend time to figure out which journals are A, which journals are Q1, which ones are Q2, Q3. It doesn't matter whatever level, just put that there in brackets so people will know. What have I done? I've got a few items here that are in press. So maybe they come out this year, but for now, I maybe hope that they come out in 2023, because I don't want to have too much in 1 year. But it's good if you're applying for a job, if you got it in press, then you need to put it in press to know that, okay, that's already in. That's like conditional acceptance. That's different from a pipeline where you haven't got conditional acceptance. Well, really, I think I've got one with JMAR, but I just want to downplay that at the moment because we're still revising that for it to be sent back. And I hope that it gets accepted for 2023, so we don't lump everything all into 1 year. So you want to put it into your pipeline if you're there. And so what goes between your pipeline and what goes in publication doesn't have to be Monash's definition. Monash's definition is, if we don't see it in print, we're not going to count it. Well, for your CV, you should put it in as soon as you see it forthcoming, or as soon as you see it, the publisher's working on it and it's in press, then that should be in your CV. All right. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Let's move on. And notice again, big letters, research grants and awards. Big letters, PhD supervision. Okay. Big letters, teaching innovations. Grateful to receive that award. So then I'm going to put that in there. And it doesn't hurt if I put in that headline that goes with that. Well, because number one, it's 2022. Number two, it's the most recent thing that I want to showcase. And that's something I wouldn't, in 5 years' time, this color headline will go away and it becomes a line item, if you know what I mean. Okay. So yes, you can color up something that's very special and it's happened in the last 6 months or 12 months. All right. Teaching Excellence Awards. Okay, great. Moving on. I would put in the CETU scores for every year. This is something that's missing with a lot of candidates that we see applying for positions here. You just don't want to have a panel to ask you, well, how good is your teaching? You need to be able to put that in your CV. So make sure you document that. And maybe if you have a very poor score, okay, you can hide that and pull out something that was better. So even I think National University of Singapore, in my first year, my scores weren't very good, like 3.91 out of 5, 3.49. Yes, O'Connor got 3.49 out of 5 colleagues. All right. And maybe I wasn't proud of that, but at that time, I put in a lot of good comments that students were saying about me. So if you have a score around 4 out of 5, great. Then put in some good comments about what students are saying about your teaching during that semester that you got 4 out of 5. All right. Please don't just let people see the number unless the number is high. Only they let the people looking at your CV see your number plus what students have said about you. Okay. And so then that says more about the number. All right. Maybe the students hate me. So I'm, I've got a good number and I'm not showing what the students are saying. All right. Online teaching. Well, here I'm actually showcasing it's online, so I can be a bit colorful there. Industry engagement impact. Why would I suddenly go color when I'm saying black and white earlier? Well, this is where you have a chance to show color if you have had flyers made up for what you have been doing. And again, when it comes to industry engagement impact, some of this is social media driven. A lot of it is visually driven. And so therefore it's an opportunity to think about, have you had an event? So Narita, I have borrowed some of the photos that you're involved with for CPA Australia. And this is something that you can use in your CV. And I think that's something that that's important as well. All right. I've got a report coming with KPMG, hopefully September, October, when they decide to have the final approval. It's been passed to KPMG Asia now because KPMG China said it's too much of a hot potato for what we're saying about China in that report. So, these are the politics of working with industry. So don't shy back on using pictures or diagrams when it comes to your industry engagement part. And there's listing, again, black and white listing of what you have done. So then we get to the appendix. And remember, you said that you had a pipeline. You had papers that were under review. You had papers were doing this and that. Well, do you have evidence of that? Well, this is where I've got 5 papers under review. So therefore, I've got a screen capture of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I've got evidence. Rather, anyone can say that, oh, I've got this in the pipeline. It's coming. Yes. And 3 years later, it's still coming. Yes. Believe me, no one believes you. All right. By now. Okay. So therefore you should put some evidence, some screen capture of an email that you have submitted. And then, that it's evidence that you are doing what you are saying. Okay. And then there's Appendix B, teaching excellence, very fortunate, grateful for that. And purple, blue letters. And what other letters you got, that becomes your appendix. And now that's 32 pages. All right. So in summary, that's what a CV looks like for me. So your DNA of your CV should be the black and white. I've used Times New Roman. Why? Because Times New Roman looks more formal than Arial. And I've used 11 point with the headings showing up as 16 point. So if any of you want a copy of this to look at, please, happy to share with you. All right. So the other thing I'm going to share with you is a cover letter. And any questions on the CV? All right. Cover letters. This is important. Actually, cover letter is important when you're applying for promotion too. Okay. Because a cover letter in some ways is more like your statement of why you believe that the time is right. Everyone's going to be promoted, but in the end, it's just a matter of timing. I remember I was at City University. I was only there for about 5 years. And I said to Professor Choi, Judy Choi, my head of department at the time, this is 2000 about, I said, oh, I want to get promoted. Here's all my materials. I want to get promoted from assistant professor to associate professor. And she said to me, Neil, the time is not right. And I said, but I still want to go ahead. Okay, but the time is not right. And of course, I didn't get promoted. All right. So it's just a matter of timing. I had to wait for another 4 years, and then they ended up 5 years, and then they promoted me. So every one of you will get promoted. It's just a matter of the time. So your CV is not about, your CV is supposed to be your evidence. Your cover letter should be about why the time is right for you to be promoted, why the time is right. And so a cover letter would look like this. Let's have a look. All right, cover letters. Let's see. I hope this is right. Well, this is one way. If I'm applying for a professor of accounting somewhere, then a cover letter may have the following items. So let's just all right. So I've been teaching, blah, 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 blah. Writing, I've been teaching, I've demonstrated experience. And then in terms of leadership, this is what I'm doing as school research lead, this is what I'm doing. And I'm passionate about blah, 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 right? So, you know, in your cover letter, you need to think about the paragraph as not saying everything, but what have you demonstrated excellence in? What have you done in leadership? What about research? And then what are you passionate about? And try and keep it simple in terms of that. And, you know, I think that's what a cover letter may look like. Now, for some of you, you're probably thinking, well, Neil, maybe it's a little bit more detailed than that. We need to show something like a statement or response to a selection criteria. Well, a response to a selection criteria is going to look like this. So, for example, a key selection criteria may be qualifications and experience. All right. So in some ways, that's a very short form of your CV. And another selection criteria may be teaching. All right. So therefore, you need to be able to say, well, what have you done in the teaching area? And so when you're responding to a key selection criteria, again, now you have to have a narrative of what you have done, and you need to explain, you need to write some English terms. So it's not just listing out in terms of, what do you call it? In terms of what your CV is going to look like. Otherwise, it just becomes a CV, right? On the research, notice I have a statement of research, a statement of what I've done the last 20 years and what my research focuses on. The research track, my research track record and research funding, and who I'm partnering with in terms of industry. Because in some ways, what you're doing with research funding, it's more about partnerships with the research funder and partners with industry outside. If you haven't got research funding, who are you partnering with? You're partnering with MICPA, you're partnering with CPA Australia, you're partnering with someone to demonstrate that you are still engaging, even if you haven't got research funding. So a big message I want to give to all of you is that, yes, you may not have the perfect CV in terms of what I'm showing you here in terms of hitting all the boxes, but you always have there's always a backup. If you haven't got a 4.5 SETU and you've got a 3.9 SETU, then show comments from students about how great your teaching is. There's always some students that think that your teaching is a 5 out of 5 SETU. Then why not put comments from those students in your CV? And that's the same in your statement of selection criteria, meaning that okay, maybe you haven't got a grant for the last 3 or 4 years. Like, I haven't got a research grant for the last 5 years. So what do I say? I'm partnering with Passage Maker. I'm partnering with Southeast Asia for different data. And so I'm talking about who I'm partnering with. So notice how I have hidden the fact that I haven't got a grant in the last 5 years, right? And so you've got to be smart in highlighting some other things that you're doing that is engagement. If you haven't got A, then show that you are doing B to fill in that gap. And then research training, how you have trained, who you have worked with. Yes, I haven't supervised many PhD students, but notice that I have listed 16 different events where I have worked with staff or PhD students to explain to them how to do research, how to engage industry, and so forth. Then they asked me, what academic leadership have you showed? Well, after the last 4 years, I've got blah, 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 blah. And then what else? Industry, profession, and engagement leadership, and then other experience with leading program reviews. And then I explain that. All right. So that's an example of a response to key selection criteria. When you are going for promotion, you need to know what the key promotion criteria are. So then you have your CV, but then you have a response to your key promotion criteria. All right. Now I'm going to share with you a live case study of what I did, because I did apply for the head of school at Monash University here. And while I was at it, I applied for a head of school elsewhere too. So I just want to show you what I did, because when you apply for a head of school position, you are now trying to demonstrate how you can apply your vision to where the school can go in the future. And it's really, really interesting in that in applying for a head of school, you need to come up with a school plan. And so here is let's just have a look at the cover letter. And this was, I applied to the University of Southampton in Malaysia, and that was earlier this year. And so the cover letter is very short. And what happened was they contacted me 1 week later. A cover letter, not much longer than the other cover letter that I gave you an example on, and the same areas. I've demonstrated excellence here in terms of leadership and terms of research lead, and then working with 4 different business schools. It will give me the edge in understanding academic matters at the top ranked rate school that I was applying for. And actually, this is very similar to the letter I used in applying to the head of school here at Monash University. So I already had practice, didn't I? All right. So then they contacted me and said, well, Neil, we want you to now be formally interviewed. But before we interview you, you need to come up with a strategic plan. And so what you see here is a wireframe of the strategic plan that I was thinking of. And this is something that I was thinking about for Monash School anyway. And this is what I presented when I applied for the Monash. head of school here last year. I did a wireframe, and this is what I would urge all of you to think about. What is your wireframe of how you would see your new position that you are being promoted to? So, for example, if you're a lecturer and you want to be promoted to a senior lecturer position, then what does your senior lecturer position look like on a wireframe? Because when you are interviewed for that level, or when you are facing that promotion committee and you are interviewed or you are asked, then this wireframe helps you to visualize yourself in that new position. So let's not mix up three things. I've given you four things now. I've given you the CV, and all of you should be able to get your CV together. Like all of you know what you know about your CV. You know more about your CV than me. Number two, I showed you what a cover letter looks like. All right, the different parts. Also, I've showed you what a response to a key criteria should look like. Key criteria, which if you're applying inside or outside, you have to have a response to key criteria statement. But nothing can prepare you for a 3-minute or a 5-minute or a 10-minute Zoom interview with a panel presenter or me or the head of school or the PVC or someone outside that just wants to get to know you better than having a wireframe of your vision for that position you're applying for. So when I put this together, I thought, okay, my wireframe is, okay, there's innovations. There's the internal you have to deal with as head of school. You have to deal with external as head of school. But then there's the major and minors. And I know going through that last year, because the PVC just pushed us heads of departments just about every week for 3 months about, well, we've got to simplify the major and minor offerings in the school. And it just forced us to think, research clusters. And so this was my wireframe as the head of school when I applied for Monash head of school: business analytics, sustainable, fintech. And then there was other stakeholders that were important: the government, industry links, manufacturing, service, think tanks, foundations. And of course, you have the professional accounting bodies and all that in there too. And then I had to think about how do I overlay what I see the future business school should be doing on the strengths that a business school needs to develop? Well, I think the strengths are going to be in the programs, in the relationships, in marketing and research. And then that was my vision. So if I ran into the PVC in the lift and the PVC asked me, oh, what's your vision for the school? I can relate to this. I don't have to memorize my CV. I don't have to memorize my response to a key criteria. You with me here? Hello, is everyone still attuned with me here? Good.
Okay.
All right. All right.
Yes,
so I just hope that this is useful, informing you. All right. So this is kind of like help you thinking about your vision for your next position that you're applying for, whether it's promotion or external. All right. So let's just close this gap on, and I did apply for the University of Southampton. And basically this was the PowerPoint, they asked me to get some PowerPoint together. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to put something together very, very quickly. And, you know, I didn't get to this stage at Monash. I got to this stage of this blueprint for what a business school looked like. And then I put that blueprint into the following slides. So there was a building a reputation for Southampton. There was the how to get teachers, student and recruitment, the processes, and also at the end of the day, Neil, what are you about? And then if there's one statement, if there's one slide that describes your application, then what is it about? And I could put that to you. You're applying for promotion. What are 4 things that really highlight about who you are and what you can bring to that position that you want to be promoted to? Okay, what is the distinguishing feature about you that you are bringing to this new position you want to be promoted to? And, you know, by the way, you know, I mulled over this for a week and I thought, no, this is not enough. I need to do better than that. And so now I want to show you the final one. And by the way, I went through an interview process with them where there was 8 people on the panel. Okay. 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people on the panel, not 4, not 3. Okay. Engineers, health, representing business, and the CEO. And all right. So here is my final PowerPoint slide I put together for my presentation. And so notice it's 33 slides. I gave them a shortened one. I think the shortened one was only half that, but I had to be ready for questions because there was appendices. But right at the beginning, here's the brief introduction. And notice the back of the slide is the picture of that university. This is a slide that I put together that described me. And this is basically summarizing visually what I feel that I have been about for the last 5 years. And right at the beginning is making a difference, with a few snippets of areas on the industry side relating to teaching, industry and research, and how I have been trying to bring those 3 axes together. All right. So that's me. That's my past. Then this, I was talking to a good friend of mine from Australia, mentored me on many occasions. And I said, here's my application, here's my PowerPoint. And the advice I was given, Neil, just make up a slide with 5 or 6 items, nothing more. You've got too much in your slides, like you always do, Neil. Yes. Okay. So this is my one slide. If I was given one slide, then this is it. Making a difference. 25 years international teaching and research, experience in research and developing, EdTech, authentic assessment pioneer, extensive compliance experience, strong external network. Now, some of you can say the same. Okay. Just because you're not a professor doesn't mean you cannot. Some of you are already doing 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So think about, what would your one PowerPoint statement look like? All right. And I'm happy, like, put something together and then bring it to me at one lunchtime and we can discuss it over lunch and then mark it up. You know, the last thing I want to do is do a Zoom session and talk about it. Let's make it friendly and have fun about it. All right. And so what I did is, first of all, then I got into the presentation, the Universal Southampton. All right, this is me. And then this was my research on the Southampton, and this is what they were doing. So, I wanted to immediately show them this is what I'm doing. And in the first 60 seconds, I was bang, this is my past. Bang, this is a summary of my past. Bang, this is what I understand that some of the challenges and where you are at Southampton. Bang. And then the final part of my first 60 seconds, or second to final, this is the areas I feel I can make a difference. Notice there's a resemblance to the original PowerPoint I showed you 5 minutes ago. Remember this one where I talked about the people. There's my wireframe, but I did talk about processes. I did talk about the people. I talked about the research, but it was all over the place. But now suddenly I spent weekends after weekends putting this together: people, promotion, partnerships, and programs. And then school business strategy 2023 to 2028. And I put in their key selection criteria, and I knew from talking to the CEO, it's about building the team, enhancing visibility, attracting students. So I put that up in the corner because I knew that that's what they want. That's what Southampton was about, 1, 2, 3, and that's what their strategy was about. Notice it's on this slide. Notice it's on this slide. And then this is what I wanted to do, and this is where I feel I could make an impact in those areas. And then I put a clear timeline. What am I going to do in the next 6 months? What am I going to do year 1 to year 2? What am I going to do the year 2 and 3, and then year 3 to 5 onwards? And so this shows that, yes, Neil, yes, you can do all this stuff, but you don't have time to do everything in the first 6 months. Neil, what is your priorities? And so here's my timeline of priorities. And so then what I did, that was the first 60 seconds of my presentation. And then I really got into what I did with enabling people. What did I do with enabling people? And there's some pictures of enabling people. What did I do with enabling colleagues? What did I do with enabling promotion, which was the other area? And then again, that's broken down into media, community, industry, a promotion relating to personal development, career opportunities. What did I do with promoting on the branding side? So again, there's lots of pictures, very visual on the promotion. Then programs, back to what Southampton was doing, mentioning compliance and everything like that. And then enabling programs, again, examples, and then enabling programs again, they're enabling partnerships at the end. And so with examples of enabling partnerships, very visual, and at the end. And then that took me to the end of the timeline. And basically that was the end of my presentation. And my presentation only went for 15 minutes less. And then at the end of the day, there was more for, if they want to ask me about KPIs, what that would look like, then I had action plans set out, so forth. So in a nutshell, where did that all start from? Basically, that all started from a wireframe like this, thinking about, which all of you need to think about. If you would have a wireframe, what would your vision for your next position look like? And maybe your vision is about people, promotion, programs, and partnerships. What are you doing to contribute to each of those areas? If you're applying for promotion to associate professor and professor level, that it would be important to think about what can you contribute on the people side, on the program side, on the partnership side, maybe on the promotion side, okay? Because that's what they start to expect of you at the associate professor and the professorship level. And so when you hear the head of school say, oh, what is your impact? What is your impact? The best way to answer a question about what is your impact is to get back to this slide here. Think about your impact in terms of, is your impact on the people? Is your impact that you want to make on the program side? Is the impact you want to make on the promotion side, or is the impact you want to make on the partnership side? And that, because what is your impact? Like, this is such a generic, and in some ways it's a dumb question. It's because it's so general. It's better to think, and it's so confusing, like, oh, you're at a lecturership level, you want to get promoted to senior lecturer. What impact have you had? That's an unfair question to ask. It's better to say, well, tell me, what have you been doing to advance the university's development of its people? What have you done in terms of advancing the development of partnerships in the university? What have you done to develop the university's advancement of its programs or its promotion? Then that sounds a bit more doable. That sounds a bit more tractable and tangible. And I think that's impact in that way. All right. So we're trying to make impact tangible. I would think in terms of those ways, whether you're at a lecturer level, senior lecturer level, associate professor level, or professor level. And let me just finish with that. I hope that there's something for everyone that has been helpful for you, and it's near the end of the hour. Happy to take questions, and I really would like to appreciate feedback from you in which area has helped your own, inverted commas, getting your stuff together so you can advance to the next level in your career. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Let me just stop sharing for a moment. Yep.
Prof, can we have the slides too, please?
Which ones?
The latest one you presented.
Oh, okay. All right. Just for sharing in our own department, I'm happy to share. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, Prof.
Yes.
Thanks.
So actually, we can take, it's near the end of the hour, and I really would like to, I would like to get an email from you, or even through the WhatsApp. Just please make a note on which areas you may have felt that helped you, because if this doesn't help you, then I'm wasting your time. All right. So just want to share with you, and shared you real cases of, I'm going through development too. I want to develop. I want to get to larger positions. And just for your own thing, they said that I interviewed very, very well. At the time, the Southampton, they were under a lot of pressure to do their MQA with Malaysia. And the only reason why they thought that I wasn't appointable as head of school was because of the lack of MQA experience. So that was fine. But then they offered me another position that was a deputy head of school in engagement and professorship, which I didn't take. But, so I was successful in that interview because they felt that I interviewed very, very well. And so there was no problem with that. So it's always good to see a successful case study. Yeah. Any questions?
Prof, have you also included your reference at the end of your CV?
References?
I mean, yeah, the recommendation letters, for example. I mean, at your level, at the professorship level, do you
Oh,
need
oh, you mean
recommendation?
recommendation? Oh, you
Yes.
mean from other people?
Yeah, from other people.
It's very interesting because, you know, I have applied for, let me just stop there. Let me just stop recording.